weekend preview. I haven't done one of these in a while, but this is a huge weekend, not just for Wrexham, but also for our opponents on Good Friday, Bristol Rovers, who I was there in the away end. Dan would have been in the press box at the Memorial because Wrexham were cruising in that game. Cruising, absolutely cruising. Elliot Lee put us ahead, Matty James through ball, and Promise Omachire, unfortunately, equalised. And Wrexham only got 1 point away at Bristol Rovers. But it's a return game. Bristol Rovers in a relegation battle in the final place in the relegation zone after Burton's win at the weekend. Wrexham just about clinging on to second place. So huge, huge stakes. Dan, we know how big a game it is from a Wrexham point of view, but just how big a game is it from a Bristol Rovers point of view?
Oh yeah, it's a massive game. I mean, I've been calling every game massive for the last kind of 2 months, really. I think it's one that Rovers fans won't go into with any sort of confidence. But I think to give even the most optimistic supporters an inkling of hope that they can somehow get themselves out of the relegation zone and get themselves over the line. I think they have to go and get a point here. I mean, straight up, I would absolutely snatch your hand off for a point right now. Yeah, it's a massive game. They're all going to be massive games from now until the end of the season. And yeah, Bristol Rovers have to obviously put an end to this torrid run of defeats they're on.
So when we played you in the reverse leg, it was David Hawson was an interim charge because you were managerless really at the time. It was an interim, and I think going into that game was you'll be able to remind me there was a German manager that they looked like they were about to get or something, and then it all collapsed, and it was a little bit of drama going into the game that they thought they might be able to get this manager, and they didn't. Now it's Inigo Calderon. Seeing some of the replies to your tweets, people were saying, you know what, maybe we need to go nuclear, get rid of Calderon and get a new manager, which they're obviously not going to do. Is that the fear now that he won't be able to turn it around? What's the mood in the fan base right now about him?
Oh, the mood is very, very low at the moment. Yeah, so they went for a German manager, couldn't get the work permit. He is now actually gone on to take the Motherwell job. I think he's Motherwell manager now, which is interesting. But yeah, they opted to go with Inigo Calderon, who was people might know him as a player playing for Brighton as a right back. He was Brighton's under-18s manager. So this is his first senior managerial job. So obviously there was a massive element of risk with that. It has got them playing some nice football at times. They've picked up some massive home wins in particular. But obviously going on a 6-game losing streak at the worst possible time as well. Yeah, has obviously seen them fall into the relegation zone. And I think as a result of Saturday's defeat to Wrexham, obviously dropping into the relegation zone, that's when fans kind of make those kind of comments about crisis talks, crisis decisions, whether you kind of chop the manager and try and bring someone in just as a kind of firefighter to kind of get you over the line. It won't happen. It won't happen. And I don't think it should happen. But at this moment in time, there is very limited confidence that him or his players will be able to get themselves over the line because there's just so much inexperience in the dugout and on the pitch, really.
Yeah, I think you saw Northampton take a similar gamble going for Kevin Nolan. Again, they'll probably just about get away with it. It seems like it's between Burton and Bristol Rovers now. But you see with Burton went for Bowyer, Gary Bowyer, who's incredibly experienced and is at the opposite end of the scale in terms of their managerial career than Calderon. If you were to pinpoint it, Wrexham fans listening, I'm assuming, won't have much idea of what happened in the January window. Looking back now, and maybe how you felt at the time, was that a success or a failure? Was that a big missed opportunity in terms of moves they needed to make?
Well, in terms of the management or in terms of
in terms of the players and kind of the recruitment, because we went out and got Sam Smith for 2 million, and that was a big move. Question marks maybe over Rodriguez, but we needed strikers. We went out and got strikers. I'm just curious, of all the holes you had in your squad, do you think that they missed an opportunity if they end up going down? Are they going to look back at January and go, yeah, we dropped the ball there?
I mean, fans will point their fingers towards the lack of a striker, 100%. I mean, there's obviously all the narrative about it's difficult to get a goal scorer in the January window, particularly one that wants to come to a team fighting relegation. But they've had injury issues with Promise Cherry basically all season. A couple of hamstring injuries, which basically ruled him out for the rest of the season back in March. Chris Martin is now injured. Real Satiru wasn't hitting form going into January. He has hit form in the kind of second half of the season, but still top scorer with 6 goals at this stage of the season isn't necessarily prolific. And then you've got a few other players that are kind of put in and chipped in with maybe 1 or 2 here and there, but ultimately they haven't had a recognised goal scorer all season, and I think that is what's going to kill them eventually. As I say, it's hard in January, but I think when you look back, it is going to be a case of just not bringing in a goal scorer. They brought in a 19-year-old striker, Michael Randolph, on loan from Cardiff, had I think 3, 4, 5 senior appearances for them. It just wasn't kind of the profile they needed to go for, and ultimately he's hardly played. So yeah, I think it's the lack of a goal scorer. They needed additions in midfield. They went and got that in Roman Soares, obviously very experienced, and Matt Butcher online from Wickham. But ultimately, I think we're going to be looking at the lack of a goal scorer.
How do you get to speak to Calderon after every game and his demeanor? Because I saw his comments where he basically came out and said, well, he didn't basically said that the Bristol Rovers, even forgive me, looked like a League Two team. Bristol Rovers look like a League Two team. I'm wondering whether that is good motivation for the players. We'll show you in the final 4 games that we're not a League Two team, or that is waving the white flag and sort of throwing the towel. And I'm not sure what side of the fence I sort of land on. What do you make of those comments and how he's handling this relegation battle?
Yeah, I mean, I think the point he was making was more the fact that right now, because they're in the relegation zone, the mentality is they're a League Two team, and so they have to get themselves out of that situation with 4 games remaining. I mean, personally, I can see where he was coming from, but I think any mention of League Two, with kind of how raw the situation still is and the emotion, probably doesn't help. He's kind of talked a lot about his experiences of fighting relegation with Brighton as a player, and suggesting that is very similar to fighting relegation as a manager. But I personally don't buy that. I've really liked our conversations in press conferences, but that's probably one thing that I probably disagree with in terms of what he's been saying. But naturally, he's got to cling on to whatever kind of positive trait to prove that he is the man to do it as he can. I mean, it's an incredibly tough first job in senior management. I think he's shown that he's got a very good football brain. I think he's proven that he can be a very good coach, because there was clear improvement pretty early on. But as I say, this run of 6 defeats in a row is killed him. It's killed Rovers ultimately, and so yeah, I think that's why there's probably a lack of optimism towards them getting out of this situation now.
So Rovers fans are going to travel up to Wrexham on Good Friday. We're obviously confident, but a little bit nervous after the game against Wigan. Bristol Rovers analysts will look at that and say Wrexham didn't have a single shot on target and probably could have played another 90 and wouldn't have had a shot on target. Really, it was really, really, really poor on the day. There's nobody's going to argue to the contrary. And Wigan, in all fairness, are not a high flying team. Whether you think they're in a false position or not. Bristol Rovers obviously did get a result against Wrexham previously. Has there been much change to the personnel? It seems like it's still a sort of 4-2-3-1 type system. Obviously, Sawyers is in there now. Has there been a huge sort of turnover? Wrexham going to be seeing a lot of different players than we saw down in Bristol?
Potentially. I mean, there are a couple that played on that game that won't be available. Obviously, I think Michael Forbes actually started that game. He went back to West Ham, his parent club, in January, and then got another loan, because I think he came off with a hamstring injury,
That's it.
if I remember
That's one.
rightly. Obviously, Cherry's out for the rest of the season. I think I think that was the game he returned in, and he subsequently picked up injuries after that. But no, not too different. I mean, in terms of consistency within the team, it's been Connor Taylor and James Wilson at centre back. They've been pretty much the only consistent factor. I guess. Well, actually, thinking about it, there probably will be change. Josh Griffiths went back to West Brom, so there'll be a change in goal. I'd imagine there'll be two different fullbacks. Jack Hunt came back into the reckoning a couple months ago, and then it's kind of rotated at left back with the likes of Clinton Mola, Sil Swinkles, who's on loan from Aston Villa, and then, as you say, I'd imagine the two January signings in Sawyers and Butch come in. Then you've got 18-year-old Kofi Shaw in attacking midfield, who's outstanding talent. I'd be very surprised if he's playing for Rovers next season, if it is League Two football for them. I think there's a lot of interest in him. He hasn't been able to score yet since coming into the side, but I think there's a goal coming for him for sure. Let's see if it's on Friday. So yeah, there's a mix. I think that's one of the biggest issues, to be honest with you, mate. It is one of the things that have held them back, the lack of consistency within team selection. I can't remember the last time they went unchanged.
Scott Sinclair's a funny one because I think if people don't follow Rovers, obviously he is somebody that has played at Swansea, has played at Man City, he's played at the very highest level. 36 now. From the outside looking in, it looks like he's a bit of a peripheral figure at Rovers. Is that fair to say, or has he been fairly involved?
I think at the moment peripheral is probably quite fair. He's starts have been hard to come by. They've not been consistent. I mean, he was made captain in the summer after signing an extension on his deal. But yeah, I think he's come under criticism for his leadership role. I think being captain, and the kind of suggestion is that he's a leader behind the scenes, maybe in the dressing room. He's maybe not a shouter, but he leads by example. You know, obviously a model pro, top player. Yeah, I think at the moment peripheral. I'd be surprised if he starts, to be honest, on Friday. Comes off the bench with not that much time to go, so he's not really an impact sub anymore. I think he's another one with his contract expiring. I'd be surprised to see him given a new deal.
I guess the final sort of two questions I would say similarly linked, but Burton Albion have got a game in hand, which is very, very late on. I think it's just before the final game of the season, or it's very close to the end, I think. How many points out of the remaining 12 for Rovers? I know you'd say 12, but how many realistically do you think they're going to need? Are they going to need 10 to give themselves any hope of getting out of this?
I mean, I said before Saturday they need 7 from their last 4. I've changed that now, to be honest with you, because yeah, I mean the form Burton are in is clearly enough to get themselves over the line. So it seems, even despite what looked like a tough fixture schedule. So I'd say 9 at this moment in time. 7 might still do it. 7 might still do it, but on the
We
face
should
of
say
it,
it's
very few.
Wrexham. We should say it's Wrexham.
Yeah,
Who's after Wrexham? Somebody else. Then it's Reading.
Stevenage and
Oh,
Reading at
Stevenage,
home, and then
Reading,
Blackpool away on the last day.
God, a trip to the seaside with your League One status in the mix might be a hell of a. It could be boom or bust. But those 2 home games, I know obviously Wrexham's a big game. There's no games you can afford to throw away now. But I mean, those 2 home games are absolutely imperative, aren't they? Regardless of what
Yeah,
happens on Friday, those 2 home games are enormous.
yeah, they have to win them. Simply put, they have to win those 2 home games. I mean, Rovers have got the worst away record in the whole league, at 11 points all season. And I think that's where the lack of optimism solely comes from, to be honest. Home form has been decent. It's dropped off, obviously, with this losing streak. But the vast majority of points have come from the Mem. So you've got to win those 2 home games. And then, yeah, I'd say they probably have to win one of the 2 away games. I don't think a draw is going to be enough, assuming they won those home games. So, yeah, as you say, that Blackpool away game, if the situation is still undecided come the final day, I will take that. I think Rovers would take that as well. As you mentioned, the game in hand that Burton have, Wigan at home between Rovers' final 2 games of the season. The timing's not great, and you'd expect Burton to be up for that and go win that one. So, yeah, it's looking difficult, but it's not done yet.
Well, look, it's Friday first. 11 goals scored for Bristol Rovers. I'm trying not to put the jinx on it here because it just feels like everything I read out is just going to come back and bite me on the backside. 11 goals scored in 21 away league games. 3 away wins all season. Uh, I, I'm trying to think of a formula in which Bristol Rovers will have the belief on the back of 6 straight defeats that they know Wrexham will dominate the ball. They know Phil Parkinson's team will have a lot of the ball, will play the 3-5-2. It might take one of your best defensive performances in a while. I guess. Have you seen in any of the games under Calderon? Have you seen a level of defensive discipline that they might be able to pull out here that can give them a chance?
I mean, to be fair to them, in their last away game, they were good value for a 0-0 away at Bolton. They held firm. They just had very little quality with the ball, but out of possession, they were actually very solid and very disciplined. So I think if they kind of use a bit of inspiration from that, obviously not conceding a late goal, but if they take inspiration and confidence from how they were without the ball that day, then yeah, potentially. I mean, look, the atmosphere is going to be incredible. It's going to be a raucous atmosphere. It's going to be party like, carnival like. I think the key for Rovers is managing that. They kind of did that at Bolton. In fairness to them, they started the better of the two teams, and that would be my kind of focus. Just start well, start solid. I personally be quite keen to see them match Wrexham in terms of formation. I'd like to see an extra defender in there because as you say, 11 goals, goal scoring away from home has not been a strength at all for this team. So I think the best chance of a result may be a goalless draw. So yeah, I think there's a few positives they could take from that Bolton away game. That maybe when they beat Huddersfield 1-0 and held on for a clean sheet, that's another one where they've defended very well. But yeah, I would expect with the atmosphere that it's going to be like on Friday, they just need to manage that crowd.
Oh, goalless draw, I think would have the pitchforks in Wrexham sharpened, Dan. I think we would be panicking and you might be looking over your shoulder depending on that result. So look, Friday, huge stakes. Dan's socials are in the description so you can read his coverage, because I always find it interesting seeing how the other teams get on, because as much as we're on that upward trajectory, we know what it's like to slip down. And yeah, outside of Friday, I do wish you all the best. And I do hope that you
Thank
can
you.
get to the final day, Dan, and it be all to play for. But yeah, wish you luck. Maybe see you on Friday. And yeah, as always, remember to like, subscribe, share the video if you can, and we'll keep trying to do these opposition previews.
A Wrexham AFC podcast with Nathan Salt and Rich Bay.